Greetings, everyone, and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Chief Content Officer at Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. President Joe Biden's decision to pardon his son, Hunter Biden, is being criticized across the country by Democrats and Republicans alike. Hunter pleaded guilty over the summer to federal charges of failing to pay $1.4 million in taxes from 2016 to 2020, and a jury in Delaware convicted the president's son of illegally buying and owning a gun while using crack cocaine. Joining me to discuss this is Casey Harper, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for the Center Square. Casey, what's the fallout been from President Biden's decision, especially after he and his press secretary repeatedly said he wouldn't pardon Hunter Biden?
Well, Dan, the Democrats lost the moral high ground with this decision. This is, in some sense, I don't know if anyone can fault a father for pardoning his son. I'm not sure I wouldn't do the same thing in his position. But the problem is that President Biden has spent this entire campaign cycle lecturing the American people that no one is above the law. No one is above the law. He said it ad nauseum. No one is above the law, of course, referring to his opponent, President-elect now, Donald Trump, who's faced all these, I'll say he has faced some, real charges, but it wasn't crack cocaine and buying guns and not paying his taxes. It was questions around some kind of niche classified documents, things that a lot of people do. Biden did the same thing and wasn't prosecuted, etc. There was more to it, but it wasn't crack cocaine and gun purchases and all that. So what Democrats lost is the high ground. And I think he's put a lot of Democrats in a bad position. He made a lot of pundits look pretty stupid who were also lecturing the American people that, that Biden would never do something like this. Because part of the argument against Trump is that Biden is a return to normalcy. He's not going to be, corrupt or have the favoring of his friends and allies the way that Trump allegedly would. And that kind of went out the window. It also gives Trump a blank check, Dan, to pardon a lot of people who are being, there's a lot of Trump allies who have been prosecuted, actually. And the January 6th crew, there's, from people who actually went in the Capitol to people who were involved in, like the electors who were casting ballots for Trump, and some of them, and even the lawyers have been prosecuted who tried to help Trump legally challenge the 2020 election results. So there's this whole Trump camp that I think now Trump has a window when taking office to pardon all of them, and they really can't say much to him, I think, because of the Hunter Biden thing. But Dan, haven't we all illegally purchased a gun while doing crack cocaine after we didn't pay $1 million in taxes? Isn't that just the American story?
I can't speak for you, Casey, but I have not.
Okay.
Hunter was facing sentencing on December 12th in the federal gun case in Delaware, and December 16th in the tax evasion case. So he was just really days away from possibly facing jail time. Who knows what he would have been sentenced to? Maybe it wasn't going to be jail time. But what's just as interesting about this pardon is that it's a blanket pardon for 10 years?
Yes.
Including dating back to President Biden's term in office as vice president under President Obama, and House Republicans had an ongoing investigation in Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings that they allege financially benefited the Biden family overall, including President Joe Biden. That makes it even more curious, doesn't it?
Of course. The Oversight Committee led by James Comer, the chairman out of Kentucky, he has had this investigation going on for a while now, and he's found, I believe it's over $25 million pouring in from entities in countries around the world, like Ukraine. So, questionable country, of course. China, very questionable. And apparently Hunter Biden was, traveling around the world selling something to the tune of millions of dollars to these countries. Of course, he infamously ended up on the Burisma board in Ukraine, where his credentials were kind of questioned. How did he end up on this giant energy company's board? Just so happens to be, Joe Biden's son, and now we're sending all this money to Ukraine. It's just kind of all questionable. And Democrats have, up and down denied that there's anything to this. This said this is all just nonsense. But this pardon pretty much covers the entire time that enterprise was going on. So whether they knew secretly that there was something that could be prosecuted, or whether they just feared Trump would try to make something out of it, they covered their bases by extending this pardon back to, I think, 2014.
And as you said, of course, Biden repeatedly has said no one is above the law, talking particularly about former President Trump, President-elect now Trump, and the crimes his Justice Department have accused Trump of, and a couple of states' attorneys in New York and Georgia. Those charges are still pending. What President-elect Trump is going to be in office here in just over a month. What do you think this decision by President Biden to pardon his son, what will it mean for President-elect Trump when he's inaugurated, after he's inaugurated? You referenced the January 6th convictions. Do you see this as an open path for Trump to pardon his allies?
Definitely, because of the nature of Hunter Biden's pardon. It wasn't just for those specific crimes. It was just anything he may have done since 2014. It's pretty incredible pardon. So it just adds to Trump's momentum, Dan. Trump has so much momentum. He has the popular vote. He has the House. He has the Senate. He has basically embarrassed all those who stood against him, especially the establishment Republican never Trumpers. They're totally irrelevant now. People like Liz Cheney just kind of been discredited at this point. So many of his enemies who stood up against him during the first term or just have been disemboweled politically. And now any maybe attempt to make Trump have some kind of scruples has been also just kind of undercut by what the president did, pardoning his son. And so this just kind of lays the groundwork for Trump to basically get away with doing more of what his agenda is. And some people say get away with, some say finally it's happening. But I think he basically has a blank check going in on day one.
Thank you for joining us today, Casey. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.